So I'm going to show another option for finishing the base of this. So I'm going to alter the foot of this a little bit to give a little bit of lift and, you know, kind of reflect the organic nature of the top of this. So this is still nice and pliable. So one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to press in here and give a little bit of volume. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. So this is going to have a little bit of a lift. So I'm going to slightly alter the base of this. So I've taken my thumb and pressed in the base with my fingers supporting the inside, and that's going to kind of push out this volume of this part and have a little bit more of an organic feel. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. So press my thumb in, push out with my fingers, and I'll do the same on these sides, but maybe just slightly less to have a smaller push in. And that's just going to give a slightly different profile to the volume of this piece. And it's going to get a different kind of foot attached to it. Once I have that, I'm going to check it from all angles to make sure I've pressed in the amount that I want to. Okay, then much like the other ones, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of moisture in the bottom of the piece. And this becomes even more important to make sure I'm holding this in the same direction, because these probably aren't spaced exactly the same. So I want to make sure what I cut out here is going to fit on there correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a slight mark with the piece. And once again, this is more important this time with the altered foot to have it sitting in the right direction. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little tick mark on the base piece and a small mark on the actual vase form, so I know which is going to match up with that. And I'm going to set this aside. Okay, so I have kind of 4 corners in this, and this is going to get a scalloped bottom once again. And this is actually going to be pressed against the piece. So I'm going to use my needle tool once again. I'm going to kind of mark the 4 corners of each of these little feet that were created on this piece when I pressed the base in. And that'll kind of dictate where my scallops are. So I can kind of, you know, cheat a little bit and make sure that they're gonna be evenly spaced. And then I can go from those marks. So once again, I'm gonna stop cutting the bottom of the scallop where the base of the piece was on this piece. I'm gonna use my needle tool once again. So I'm gonna go ahead and connect the dots of the marks I've made here by cutting a scallop on that surface. Then I'll split the sides into 2 scallops. This will give a nice little decorative base on there, and another place that I can have a change of glaze if I'd like. Okay, so once I've got that cut out, and it creates kind of a little funny shape on there. Once again, I'm going to take a damp finger and start at each of the bases of those scallops and kind of pull that clay in and soften all those edges. I'll do the same to the back side as well. I cut off my tick mark, so I'm going to go ahead and remark it here so I know which side will match up properly with that. So this surface will end up being pressed up against that piece. So I'm going to go ahead and score all of this to make sure this is going to stick on there well. So I'm going to wet and score this base, and then wet and score the bottom of my vase form. And once I score this whole area, then I'm going to go ahead and kind of clean up those edges before I attach it, because I don't want any of those little score marks kind of squirting out of there, because I want to have that nice clean line of the edge of this piece of clay that's going to show up on the piece. Okay. Once again, so this is the corner that's going to match up there. So I'm going to score the base of the piece plus up just a little bit, because I know that one of my scallops is going to kind of come up this area that I've pressed in. So I don't want to go crazy on the scoring, because I don't want to score above. I don't want to score out my marks above where the base slab will be attached, but I want to have enough scored so it'll stay adhered to the base of the piece. So I can score up a little bit here. I know I'm going to have some of the scallops come up here a little bit. Okay, then I'll line it up carefully, making sure that none of the scallops go under the bottom of the vase. I've got my tick marks that I can line up. Okay, and then once I make sure all around that it's lined up well, I'm going to kind of press down with wide hands on the surface so that kind of sticks to the piece. Then I'm going to very carefully start coaxing this on. So this is going to end up being laid flat against my vase form. So I'm going to start at my little places where I pressed up. I'm going to use the heel of my hand and gently start turning those up and go around, just kind of start turning the clay up. That's why it's nice for this to be a little bit more of a fresh clay base rather than something that's set up from a little soft leather hard, because I'm really moving this clay a good bit. So I definitely would let this dry under plastic slowly for a couple days to make sure that this water, the moisture equalizes between the vase and the base. So I see this almost like a little bit of a, kind of like a lace trim on the bottom of the little dress form. So once I get that initially attached, then I'm going to take a damp thumb and I'm going to press it against all along the bottom first. Kind of tap that part up a little bit. So make sure it's initially attached. You especially want to pay attention here. This is where it will tend to leak. If you don't get this pressed in there really well, you need to make sure you've got it pressed against the base that's been turned up, because this would potentially not be attached well enough and leave a little gap, especially with your stamps that you have in there. So you really want to make sure you press that in. So now I'm going to take my thumb and really kind of compress this clay into the vase. Being careful not to distort this too much. I want this pressed in, but I want to keep that nice clean cut scallop surface. So once I get these attached all the way around, paying close attention to the parts that have been pressed up, I'm going to come back with my pony roller all along the bottom. And then against the surface of these. Being careful not to distort them too much, but I really want to make sure they're pressed in and attached well. But once again, this really changes the look of the piece. It's reflective of the scallops that are on the top and on the vase body where it was stamped. You know, one final move that I'll do is kind of use the heel of my hand to kick this middle piece up and give a little bit of lift at the places where I pressed up with my hand. And that is finished.